I built my turbo Miata over the course of about 7 years. Today, we're going along with all of the build costs that went along with making this thing what it is today, and all of the maintenance costs that I put into this to keep it on the road. Before we get too far into this video, I want to say that if you see anything in this video that you like, I have a full spreadsheet down below with all of the parts that I used on this car. I'm going to start out with going over all the maintenance costs with this car, but I'm going to have chapters down below so you could skip to whatever section you want to look at. All right, starting to go through this list, we're going to start out with a cam angle sensor O-ring. That's a common leak on Miatas, and that's right at the back of the engine there, and that cost me $5. Then, I'm counting this as a maintenance item, I went ahead and got a car cover for this thing, and that cost me $54. Sometimes this car is stored outside, and I just wanted to protect it as much as I can. Next up, I replaced the rain rail on this car, which if you don't know, it's basically a water channel that runs along the length of the back of the top, and the old one is cracked and they're common to break, and then you get water leaks in your Miata. That cost me $50. And then of course this car had rust because it is a Miata, and I fixed the rocker on the other side. I'm estimating Bondo paint and metal cost me about $100. Next up, when I first got this car, I changed out the air filter. That cost me $15. And then over the 7 years of owning this car, I've done several oil changes, so I'd estimate that I spent about $200 on oil changes over those 7 years. And now we get into some bigger maintenance items. The next one on the list is a clutch slave cylinder. It's a pretty common thing to go out on Miatas. Still only cost me $25, but it did leave me stranded. Luckily just stranded in my driveway. Next up, we have a clutch and flywheel kit. I put a stock replacement clutch and flywheel in this early on when I had the car. That cost me $160. And then I also did stock pads and stock rotors, and that cost me $100. I did the timing belt and water pump on this car, and I actually made a mistake and went with a really cheap kit. That was only about $35, but then I had to buy a nicer seal, and I had some other problems. So all in all, timing belt and water pump, I'm into it for about $75 and way too much time with how many times I had to redo it. The last two maintenance items on this list are a camber adjustment bolt kit, because I snapped some of those while doing some of the mods that I'm going to talk about later. And finally, a valve cover gasket, which was $29. Total cost for all of the maintenance and all of the repairs on this car over 7 years, $916. If you ask me, that's really not bad, especially considering that this car has 216,000 miles now, and it's not used lightly, so it's actually pretty cheap to use and maintain, and I'm really happy about that. Before we go over the mods on this car, I want to go over how much I paid for this car. I got this car about 7 years ago when Miatas were significantly cheaper, and I only paid $1,000 for this car. Back in the day, it was a decent deal. This was a really high mileage car, and it did have rust, but $1,000 is what I paid for that. Now we're going to go ahead and get into the mods. And I want to say that if you're interested in any of these mods, I have a full spreadsheet linked down below where you could get all of these parts for your Miata. Also, while we're at it, let us know down below how much you've spent on your Miata, how long you've owned it, and what mods you've done. Now let's get into mine. To make it easiest for you to estimate how much you would have to spend to build a car like mine, I'm going to put the prices of current parts on the screen and also tell you how much I spent on my parts. I got some of them used, and some of the prices have gone up significantly since I got them, so current prices should help you guys out more than just saying what I spent. When I first got this car, I wanted to set it up for some light duty track use as well as make it handle better on the street. So I did wheels with 200 treadwear tires, Yonaka coilovers, suspension bushings, a roll bar, and race seats. The first set of wheels that I had for this car was a set of TSW wheels with Falcon 615K tires. I got those used and they cost me about $200. Around the same time, I put a set of Yonaka coilovers on this car to lower it and make it a little bit stiffer, and at the time those cost me about $450. Price on those is up to about $550 now. I also did a full set of poly bushings all around in this car to get rid of the old and tired bushings that were originally in it, and now sets of those are going for around $340. I was lucky enough to be able to find a used roll bar for this car that only cost me $300, but if you wanted to get something new, you're looking at about $600 to $800 or so. At the same time that I put that roll bar in there, I went ahead and put in 2 racing harnesses, 2 Sprint 5 seats, and a harness bar. I also put in some padding for that roll bar. At the time, the pair of Sparcos were $462, the padding was $50, and the harness was $150. As you could see on screen, unfortunately, all that has gone up since I did that. As they do when you drive your car on track and run soft tires, the tires eventually wore out, and I got a new set of Falken 615K tires. Those at the time cost me $325. Now, prices unfortunately again have gone up on those. At this point, I was actually very happy with how this car was looking and driving, so I didn't really do any mods for several years. Then, about 2 years ago, I went ahead and did some more custom work on the interior, which we'll get into now. A lot of this work was done custom by myself and my dad because he does automotive upholstery, so it's hard to put a real price for how much I spent on this, but I'll put a rough estimate of what you could expect if you were to get this done somewhere. First, a few things that we didn't do custom. We got belts that were made custom but not made by us, and those cost $150. I got tired of using the racing harnesses on the street, and also didn't really like the idea of a harness on the street, but I don't want to get into that in this video. I also did custom brackets to use a standard belt with the roll bar. That cost about $60. And then we get into the things that were made custom. The first is a bracket to mount a double-din radio in this car. That's something that I currently make. I designed it to do exactly what it's doing in my car, and that is available on my Etsy shop. I sell those things for about $29 for a basic version that will let you put a double din in your car. At the same time that I was designing up that, we made custom floor mats for this car, a matching shift boot, and a center console cover. These things all look really good, and it made the interior of the Miata feel a lot more premium than it does from the factory. After getting absolutely roasted by a lot of you after my first interior video, I went ahead and put in a different 3-spoke eBay wheel to get rid of the stock NA wheel. That's no longer in the car though, and I'll get into what this wheel is shortly in this video. Now let's talk about this steering wheel that's currently in the car. This is a custom wrapped NB wheel. NB wheels could be picked up for about $50 a lot of the time, and this wrap is custom from East Detailing. If you want to get a wrap like this for your car, I have a discount code so you could get 10% off and do this yourself. At about the same time that I was working on this custom interior, I did a Racing Beat header and an upgraded front sway bar. The Racing Beat header is no longer on the car, but to get that front flying Miata bar nowadays is around $179. Eventually, I got tired of the old TSW wheels that I had on this car, even though I actually still like them, which is why I keep them around, and I got this other set of Kosei K1s for this car. I picked this set up for $300 used with no tires, and I actually have some free tires on them right now that are really old and rock hard, but those were $300 for the set. Getting back into a few little things that I did with the interior and just to clean up the final look of the car, I did LED footwell lights in this car, which make a really nice difference, and I'm really happy with how those turned out. I spent about $10 on LEDs for those things. I also put LED reverse lights in this car, which cost me about $15 and make a huge difference when backing up. And then I decided to turbo my car. I'm going to go over the drivetrain mods first, get through all of that, and then we'll get into the turbo kit. Since I turboed this car, I put in a 3.9 Torsen, which I could estimate is around $500 to $700 in today's market. Upgraded 1.8 axles and drive shaft, which I could estimate about $200 or so if you want to just get those not in a pair with the Torsen. And I swapped in a Flying Miata Stage 2 clutch. This clutch I actually got from my friend Matt for free because we were K-swapping his car and he no longer had a use for it. If you want to get one of those clutches though, they cost around $499 for the full kit. Other little things that I've done to go along with the turbo kit is a fire extinguisher and mounts and hood vents on this car. Other little things while we walk to the front and show you the turbo kit are 3D matte floor mats, which cost about $110. I have a discount code for those, and door bushings, which make a really nice difference and were $19. That puts the grand total of mod costs at $3,714. It's important to remember that that does include 2 sets of wheels, a few sets of floor mats, and a few other things that I have 2 of. Also, this does not include selling off the old parts when I did mods, which of course made a little bit of money back. At this point, total cost of buying the car, maintenance, and those mods is $5,630. Now let's get into the turbo kit, which I'm going to go over all at once. The turbo kit on this car is the one that I featured in my 2 Broke 2 Boosted build series, where I was trying to turbo a Miata for as cheap as I could while still using modern technologies like a standalone ECU. The cost of the ECU for this car is the most expensive part of the turbo kit, but it's still really not that expensive. The ECU is a Speedy EFI plug-and-play unit with sensors that was $375. The manifold and turbo were both straight from eBay. The manifold is a nice cast log style manifold that's known to be pretty durable, though not super efficient. I picked one of those up for $90, and the turbo and wastegate setup was about $180. After that, I got my oil lines and my intercooler and a bunch of intercooler couplers. This setup again was totally custom, so it was a lot of piecing things together and making it work. Total cost on all of the intercooler, couplers, and piping is around $155. Total cost for the downpipe, which I welded up myself, was about $65. I also upgraded to larger used RX-8 injectors, which are 420cc, and those cost me about $65. Then we have oil line fittings, an upgraded PCV valve, and a few other small parts, and that puts us at $1,207 for a complete turbo kit for this car. At that point, this car was running and driving turbocharged, and it was super fun, but there are a few other little things that I wanted to do to really round out this kit. I put in an upgraded fuel pump for about $100 and an electronic boost controller for about $50. Add in some miscellaneous costs, and I would say that this turbo kit cost me a little bit under $1,500, and it has been absolutely awesome. I do want to say that the turbo kit is what made me upgrade the clutch and upgrade the rear end, and if you're looking to build a Miata at stock power levels, you often don't have to do any of those mods, so you could build it a good bit cheaper than I did here. I also want to say that all of these mods are of reasonable quality, but they're not the top of the line that you could do with a Miata. And that brings me to the total cost of this car. Over 7 years, I have spent $7,130 to build my turbo Miata. I would say really not bad for the amount of entertainment and fun that this car has given me. And with all that, that's going to wrap up this video. Again, don't forget to let us know down below what you've done to your car and how much you've spent. Like this video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and I hope you stick around for the next one. Take care.